They gave me 15 minutes to introduce Dr. Greger, which is not enough, but actually I only need a minute. I just want to say a couple moments. How many people have been coming to PBNSG for a year or less? Or maybe even this is your first meeting. Just raise your hand. Okay. So I do want to point out, I feel nostalgic because Paul Chatlin's not here. He's in Florida. He's watching. Happy birthday, Paul, wherever the camera is. I think we should all shout happy birthday, Paul Chatlin. Yay, Paul. Hopefully you heard that. You'll probably text me in a minute. But I do want to say for those of you who have been coming here relatively recently, I'm nostalgic because it was exactly, I think to the day, that I got a text from Paul Chatlin, a man I did not know, who reached out to me to say, I understand you're a cardiologist that supports plant-based eating. I am a miracle. Basically, this is what he said. I was supposed to have bypass surgery 6 months or so before, the summer of 2013. He was calling me January 2014. The thing is, it worked, and I'm great, and I feel wonderful. I just am lonely because I don't know people doing this, and I understand you might have some patients you've been educating, and the truth is I've been doing that for decades. And we got together, had a cup of tea in my kitchen table, and we said, let's get a room. Let's be crazy. Let's get a little room at Beaumont Hospital, put out one little ad in a local newspaper, and see if we can get 15 or 20 people interested in a support group. Kind of a Weight Watchers, AA, kind of church-based, whatever you want to call it, support group. And for those of you that weren't there, and I was, the room that held 80 at Beaumont, we had 136 people, and maybe I'm off by a couple show up. It actually violated the fire code. It was insanely interesting on a snowy, very, very treacherous February night. The hospital administration was a little concerned because they hadn't really approved the agenda and there were way too many people. They let us do it one more time the next month, and the next month about 150 people showed up, and they ended our relationship with that hospital because we violated the fire code, and we were talking about healing disease with nutrition, and that's not even now in 2020 always well accepted in a hospital. And graciously, this high school and another high school accepted us. But if you would have asked us then, would this grow to 7,000 members and cookbooks and cooking classes and prominent speakers and internationally known speakers? I mean, it's phenomenal, and there's no doubt about it. I kicked a little in the beginning to get it going. Paul Chatlin, the volunteers, now Lisa Smith, the board, now Dr. Breaky and such, Carolyn Trapp, who's been here from day one. There is no city in the United States that has what we have. We're hoping they all get it, and Paul Chatlin's working on that, and Chicago has a startup, and Philadelphia and others. But we have such an amazing ability. And I'm going to do one more thing before I introduce them because I do have a minute according to the clock. If you're in the room and you've used plant-based nutrition to help you move towards reversing a disease, maybe losing a medicine, blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, if you're comfortable, stand on up for those that don't know. So I want you to look around. This is not what you're going to see at a medical conference for the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association. It's hard work, and it takes change, and it takes support and community, but it happens. I'll just ask one more thing. If you're in the room and your main goal was weight loss, and you've used plant-based nutrition, I'll say conservatively, to lose 30 or more pounds, there's nothing special about that number, I'm just picking. Stand up if that's been a result you've been able to achieve using plant-based nutrition. Yeah. And that's not, we're not shaming, we're just recognizing in the medical world carrying excess weight can be related to certain medical conditions and medical costs, and for some people losing weight is the pathway towards their health, and we're going to hear all about it. I have read Dr. Greger's book, the new one. He was very kind and sent me a preprint. I literally, and I'm not joking, couldn't put it down. I took notes all through it. I just haven't got to the 4,400 medical references yet at all. But all right, well, thank you for sharing that. We do have some world record setters in the room who have completely reversed chronic conditions, have completely reversed obesity. I won't point them out particularly, but that's the real deal here. If you wonder if it works, there are some doctors, there are some dietitians, there are some others. They're just regular people that actually watched Forks Over Knives, read some books, took a cooking class, and just applied it, whatever their own medical team said or not, although you always want to work with them if you can. Dr. Michael Greger, MD, Fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, is a physician, New York Times Bestselling Author, and if not already, soon to be, I'm sure, a repeat New York Times Bestselling Author. Are you yet? Already? All right. and an internationally recognized speaker on nutrition, food safety, and public health issues, a founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He's a licensed general practitioner specializing in nutrition, graduating from the Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine. He was honored with the Lifestyle Medicine Trailblazer Award in 2017, and the co-founder, of course, if you don't know, of nutritionfacts.org. The best thing you can do when you drive, when you are on vacation, just listen to them. Don't watch them while you drive, but just use your time wisely. Before the current book and the topic, his mega best-selling How Not to Die book reached unbelievable records, followed by the cookbook. And I say this is, I think, the most amazing comment of this introduction. 100% of all proceeds he's ever received from books, DVDs, speaking engagements have and always will be donated to charity. And I heard on an interview, that this book that he has tonight had an advance of $1.5 million. I mean, very few authors anywhere of any kind of book get that kind of money, and that all went to research. This evening, Dr. Egger will share his research and experience on the question, how can we best use science to manage our weight most optimally? Dr. Michael Greger, come on up. Stand on up.
Aww, thank you. Thank you. Aww. Now the pressure's on. 4,400, how about 4,990 references? Outrageous. Exactly, outrageous. Surely, if there was some safe, simple, side effect-free solution to the obesity epidemic, we'd know about it by now, right? Well, I'm not so sure. It may take an average of 17 years before research evidence makes it into day-to-day clinical practice. To take one example that was particularly poignant for my family, heart disease. Decades ago, Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues published evidence in one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world that our leading cause of death could be reversed with diet and lifestyle changes alone, yet hardly anything changed. Even now, hundreds of thousands of Americans continue to die from what we learned decades ago was a reversible condition. I had seen it with my own eyes. My grandmother was cured of her end-stage heart disease by one of Dean's contemporaries, Nathan Pritikin, using similar methods. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65 after one too many open heart surgeries, but thanks to a healthy diet, she was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96 to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. So if effectively the cure to our number one killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. That's why I became a doctor in the first place and why I started my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website's free, no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles almost every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. All right. So what does the science show is the best way to lose weight? Well, if you want testimonials and before and after pictures, you have come to the wrong place. I'm not interested in anecdotes. I'm interested in evidence. When it comes to making decisions as life and death important as what to feed yourself and your family, Well, then there's really only one question. What does the best available balance of evidence say right now? The problem is that even just sticking to the peer-reviewed medical literature is not enough, as false and unscientifically unsupported beliefs about obesity are pervasive even in scientific journals. Right? The only way to get the truth, then, is to dive deep into the primary literature, read all the original studies themselves, but who's got time for that? There are more than 500,000 scientific papers on obesity, with 100 new ones published every day. But that's what we do at nutritionfacts.org. We comb through tens of thousands of studies a year so you don't have to. Very nice. And indeed, we uncovered a treasure trove of buried data. For example, today I'll cover simple spices proven in randomized controlled trials to accelerate weight loss for pennies a day, but with so little profit potential, it's no wonder that those studies never saw the light of day. Of course, the only profiting I care about, though, is your health. That's why 100% of the proceeds I receive from all my books are all donated to charity. I just want to do for your family what Pritikin did for my family. But wait, isn't weight loss just about eating less and moving more? I mean, isn't a calorie a calorie? That's what the food industry wants you to think. The notion that a calorie from one source is just as fattening as a calorie from any other source is a trope broadcast by the food industry as a way to absolve itself of culpability. Coca-Cola even put out an ad emphasizing this one simple common sense fact. As the current and past chairs of Harvard's nutrition department put it, this central argument from industry is that the overconsumption of calories from carrots would be no different than the overconsumption of calories from soda. I mean, if calorie is just a calorie, why does it matter what kind of food we put in our mouths? Well, let's explore that example of carrots versus Coca-Cola. Now, it's true that in a tightly controlled laboratory setting, the 240 calories of carrots, 10 carrots, would have the same effect on calorie balance as the 240 calories in a bottle of Coke. But those comparisons fall flat on their face out in the real world. I mean, you could chug those liquid candy calories down in less than a minute. But eating 240 calories of carrots might take you more than 2.5 hours of constant chewing. It's been tested. Not only would your jaw get sore, but 240 calories of carrots, that's 5 cups of carrots. I mean, you might not even be able to fit all those in. I mean, our stomach is only so big. I mean, once we fill it up, stretch receptors in our stomach tell us that when we've had enough. But different foods have different amounts of calories per stomachful. I mean, some foods have more calories per cup, per mouthful, per pound than others. This is the concept of calorie density, the number of calories in a given amount of food. As you can see, oil, for example, has a high calorie density, meaning it has a high calorie concentration. Lots of calories in just a small space. So, drizzling just a tablespoon of oil onto a dish adds over 100 calories. And for those same calories, you could have instead eaten about 2 cups of blackberries, for example, a food with low calorie density. Right? So these 2 meals have the same number of calories. I mean, you could swig down that spoonful of oil and not even feel a difference in your stomach, right? But eating a couple cups of berries, I mean, that could start to fill you up. So that's why, yes, biochemically a calorie is a calorie, but eating the same amount of calories in different forms can have different effects. I mean, the average human stomach can expand to fit about 4 cups of food. So, a single stomach full of strawberry ice cream, for example, could max out your calorie intake for the entire day. Right? To get those same 2,000 calories from strawberries themselves, you'd have to eat 44 cups of berries. Now, I mean, that's 11 stomachfuls, right? I mean, as delicious as berries are, I don't think I could fill my stomach to bursting 11 times a day, right? I mean, some foods are just impossible to overeat. You physically just could not fit them into your stomach because they're so low in calorie density. I mean, you couldn't even maintain your weight. In a lab, a calorie is a calorie, but in life, far from it. Traditional weight loss diets focus on decreasing portion size, but these kind of eat less approaches can leave people feeling hungry or unsatisfied. A more effective approach, then, is to shift the emphasis from restriction to positive eat more messaging of increasing the intake of healthy, low-calorie density foods. But you don't know until you put it to the test. Indeed, researchers in Hawaii tried putting people on a more traditional Hawaiian diet with all the plant foods they could eat, unlimited quantities of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and the study subjects lost an average of 17 pounds within 21 days. Calorie intake dropped 40%, but not because they were eating less food. They lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks, eating more food in excess of 4 pounds of food a day. How could this be? Because whole plant foods tend to be so calorically dilute, you can stuff yourself without getting the same kind of weight gain. They lost 17 pounds in 3 weeks eating more food. That's why in my new book, How Not to Diet, which I'm very excited about, that's why low in calorie density is on my list of the 17 ingredients for an ideal weight loss diet. Since Americans average about 3 pounds of food a day, if you stuck with mostly these foods, you could see how you could eat more food and still lose weight. Vegetables have the lowest calorie density, so researchers at Penn State decided to put them to the test. Study subjects were served pasta and told to eat as much or as little pasta as they wanted. On average, they consumed about 900 calories of pasta. Now, what do you think would happen if, as a first course, you gave them about 100 calories of salad, composed of largely lettuce, carrots, cucumbers, celery, and cherry tomatoes? Okay. Would they go on to eat the same amount of pasta and end up with a 1,000-calorie lunch? 900 plus 100? Or would they eat 100 fewer calories of pasta, effectively canceling out the added salad calories? It was even better than that. They ate more than 200 fewer calories, right? Thanks to the salad, 100 calories in, 200 calories out. So in essence, the salad had negative 100 calories. Preloading with vegetables can effectively subtract 100 calories out of a meal. That's how you can lose weight, by eating more food. Of course, the type of salad matters. The researchers repeated the experiment, adding a fatty dressing and shredded cheese, which quadrupled the salad's calorie density. Now, eating that salad as a first course didn't turn a 900-calorie meal into one with less than 800 calories. Instead, it turned it into a meal with, calories in the quadruple digits. I mean, it's like preloading pizza with garlic bread or something, right? I mean, just you end up eating more food, more calories overall. So, what's the cutoff? Studies on preloading show that eating about a cup of food before a meal decreases subsequent intake by about 100 calories. So to get a negative calorie effects, the first course would have to contain less than 100 calories per cup, right? So as you can see in the chart, that includes most fresh fruits and vegetables, but having something like a dinner roll or something would just simply not work. But hey, give people a large apple to eat before that same pasta meal, and rather than consuming about 200 calories less, it was more like 300 calories less. So how many calories does an apple have? It depends on when you eat it. Eaten before a meal, it could effectively have negative 200 calories. You see the same thing giving people vegetable soup as a first course. Hundreds of calories disappear. One study that tracked people's intake throughout the entire day even found that overweight subjects randomized to pre-lunch vegetable soup not only ate less lunch, but deducted an extra bonus 100 calories from dinner too, a whole 7 hours later. So, the next time you sit down to some healthy soup, you can imagine calories being veritably sucked out of your system with every spoonful. Even just drinking 2 cups of water immediately before a meal caused people to eat about 200 calories, 20% less, taking in about 100 fewer calories. So, no wonder why overweight men and women randomized to 2 cups of water before each meal lost weight 44% faster. 2 cups of water before each meal, 44% faster weight loss. Right? But who's going to profit from telling you that? That's why so-called negative calorie preloading is on my list of weight loss boosters. These are all the things that I could find that can accelerate weight loss regardless of what you eat the rest of the time. Anything we can put on that first course salad to boost weight loss even further? Well, in my Amping AMPK section, I talk about ways to activate an enzyme known as the fat controller. Its discovery is considered one of the most important medical breakthroughs in the last few decades. You can activate it, this enzyme, through exercise, fasting, or nicotine. But is there any way to boost it for weight loss without the sweat, hunger, or whole dying a horrific death from lung cancer thing? Well, Big Pharma is all over it. I mean, after all, obese individuals may be unwilling to perform even a minimum of physical activity, wrote a group of pharmacologists, thus indicating that drugs mimicking endurance exercise may be highly desirable. So, it's crucial that oral compounds with high bioavailability are developed to safely induce chronic AMPK activation for long-term weight loss and maintenance. But there's no need to develop such a compound because you can already buy it at any grocery store. It's called vinegar. When vinegar, acetic acid, is metabolized by our body, we get a natural AMPK boost. I mean, enough of a boost, though, to lose weight at a typical dose you might get dressing a salad? Well, let's look. I mean, look, vinegar has been evidently used for centuries for weight loss, but only recently has it been put to the test. A randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial on the effects of vinegar intake on the reduction of body fat in overweight men and women. The subjects were randomized to drink a beverage containing 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, or a placebo control group drinking a beverage developed to taste like the vinegar drink, but prepared with a different kind of acid, so it didn't actually have any vinegar in it. 3 months in, the fake vinegar placebo group actually gained body fat, as overweight people tend to do over time, whereas the genuine vinegar group significantly lost body fat, as determined by CT scan. Right? A little vinegar a day led to pounds of weight loss achieved for just pennies a day without removing anything from their diets. That's why one of my 21 tweaks to accelerate weight loss is 2 teaspoons of vinegar with each meal, either sprinkled on your salad or even just, added to some tea with some lemon juice or something. Now, the vinegar studies were nicest because they were placebo-controlled. I mean, that's hard to do with food, right? People tend to know what they're eating. You can't stuff a cabbage into a capsule, but there are some foods so potent that you can actually fit them into a pill to pit them against placebos, and that's spices. Want to know if garlic can cause weight loss? Well, simple. Give people some garlic powder pills, right, versus placebo pills, and garlic worked, resulting in both a drop of weight and waistlines within 6 weeks. Now, here they used half a teaspoon of garlic powder a day. That would cost less than 4 cents. 4 cents too steep? Well, how about 2 cents? A quarter teaspoon of garlic powder a day. About 100 men and women were randomized to a quarter teaspoon worth of garlic powder a day, and those unknowingly taking the 2 cents worth of garlic powder lost about 6 pounds of straight body fat over the next 15 weeks. Now, if you can splurge up to 3 cents a day, for all the big spenders, there's black cumin. Meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials show weight loss efficacy with, again, just a quarter teaspoon a day. You say, wait a second, what is black cumin? You obviously have not been reading your Bible. Described as a miracle herb, besides the weight loss, there are randomized controlled trials showing daily black cumin consumption significantly improving cholesterol and triglycerides, significantly improves blood pressure and blood sugar control. But I use it just because it tastes good, right? It's just a spice. I just put black cumin seeds in a pepper grinder and just use it like black pepper. With more than 1,000 papers published in the medical literature on black cumin, some reporting extraordinary results, like dropping cholesterol levels as much as a statin drug. Why don't we hear more about it? I mean, why weren't we taught about it in medical school? Presumably because there's no profit motive, right? Black cumin is just a common natural spice. I mean, you're not going to thrill your stockholders selling something you can't patent that costs only 3 cents a day. Or you could use regular cumin, acts as an appetite suppressant. Those randomized to a half teaspoon before lunch and dinner over 3 months lost 4 more pounds and an extra inch off their waist. Found comparable to an obesity drug known as Orlistat. That may sound familiar. That's the anal leakage drug you may have heard about. Though the drug company evidently prefers the term fecal spotting to describe the rectal discharge that their drug causes, the drug company's website offers some helpful tips, though. It's probably a smart idea to wear dark pants and bring a change of clothes with you to work. I mean, just in case their drug causes you to crap your pants at work. I think I'll stick with the cumin. Thank you very much. Cayenne pepper can counteract the metabolic slowing that accompanies weight loss and accelerate fat burning as a bonus. Ginger powder, over a dozen randomized controlled trials, starting just a quarter teaspoon of ground ginger a day, showing significant decreased body weight, again for just pennies a day, proven in placebo-controlled trials to work, but we probably never heard about any of this because it just can't make enough profit. My section on fat blocking foods, starts out with a command to eat your thylakoids, doctor's orders. What on earth is a thylakoid? Oh, just the source of all known life and the oxygen we breathe, no biggie. Thylakoids are where photosynthesis takes place, the process by which plants turn light into food. Thylakoids are the great green engine of life, these microscopic little sac-like structures composed of chlorophyll-rich membranes concentrated in the leaves of plants. When we eat thylakoids, in other words, when you bite into a leaf of spinach, those green leaf membranes don't get immediately digested. They can last for hours in our intestines, and that's where they work their magic. Thylakoid membranes bind to lipase. Lipase is the enzyme our body uses to digest fat. So if you bind the enzyme, then you can slow fat absorption. You say, wait a second. I mean, if all fat is eventually absorbed, though, what's the benefit? Location, location, location. There's a phenomenon known as the ileal break. The ileum is the last part of the small intestine before it dumps into the large intestine. When undigested calories are detected that far down in your intestine, your body thinks, oh, I must be full from stem to stern, and puts the brakes on eating more by dialing down your appetite. This can be shown experimentally. If you insert a 9-foot tube down people's throats and drip in any kind of calories, fat, protein, sugar, you can activate the ileal break. Then sit them down to an all-you-can-eat meal, and compared to the placebo group that just got a little squirt of water through the tube, they eat over 100 calories less. They just don't feel as hungry, right? They feel just as full, eating significantly less. That's the ileal break in action. This can then translate into weight loss. Randomize overweight women to a diet of green plant membranes. In other words, just covertly slip them a little powdered spinach, and they get a boost in appetite-suppressing hormones, a decreased urge for sweets, and a decreased urge for chocolate. This is amazing. So these are women who've been slipped some spinach versus something that just looked like green powder but wasn't actually spinach. So they didn't know who was who. But look at this craving for sweets. This is hours later, 4 hours later. Those that got the spinach, they're like, sweets, pff, sweets. Chocolate, pff, who wants chocolate? I don't even like it, right? Versus, I mean, it's just amazing different. And all just because they got slipped a little of these thylakoids, it changed their whole brain chemistry over it. So now and of course the most important part is the accelerated weight loss. Boom, right? All thanks to eating green. The actual green itself, the chlorophyll-packed membranes in the leaves. Now, the researchers used spinach powder only because then they could disguise it, so they couldn't tell who was actually eating spinach or not. But you can get just as many thylakoids eating a half cup of cooked spinach a day, right? Totally doable. Which is, look, that's what I recommend people eat 2 times a day in my daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest of healthy foods I encourage people to fit into their daily routine. In the Journal of the Society of Chemical Industry, a group of food technologists argued that given their fat-blocking benefits, thylakoid membranes could be incorporated into functional foods as a promising new appetite-reducing ingredient. Or you could just get them the way Mother Nature intended. Now, though thylakoids eventually get broken down, fiber makes it all the way down to our colon. And while it's technically true that we can't digest fiber, that's only applicable to the part of us that's actually human. Most of the cells in our body are actually bacteria. Our gut flora, which weighs as much of one of our kidneys, metabolically active as our liver, has been called our forgotten organ. And it's an organ that runs on MAC, microbiota accessible carbohydrates. So when you see me, write things like, eat lots of Big Macs. I don't want anyone to get any wrong impression here. MAC is just another name for prebiotics, what our good flora eat. In other words, fiber. What do our good bugs do with fiber? Well, we feed them and they feed us right back. They make short-chain fatty acids with fiber. Then they get absorbed from our colon into our bloodstream, circulate throughout our bodies, and even end up in our brain. It's like the way our gut flora communicate with us by sending out these little chemical signals, dialing down our appetite, all the while increasing the rate at which we burn fat and boosting our metabolism at the same time, all thanks to fiber. Check this out. Put people in a brain scanner and show them a high-calorie food like a donut, and the reward centers in the brains instantly light up. But if you repeat the experiment, but this time secretly deliver fiber-derived short-chain fatty acids directly into their rectum, you get a blunted reward center response, and subjects report that high-calorie foods just seemed less appealing. And subsequently, they ate less of an all-you-can-eat meal. Right? But fiber supplements like Metamucil don't work, which makes sense because they're non-fermentable, meaning your good gut bugs can't eat it. So yeah, it improves bowel regularity, but can't be used by our good gut bacteria to make those compounds that block your cravings. Right? For that, you actually have to eat real food. Our good gut bugs are trying to help us, right? But when we eat a diet deficient in fiber, we are in effect starving our microbial selves. Less than 5% of Americans even reach the recommended minimum adequate intake of fiber. No surprise, since the number one source of fiber are beans and whole grains, and 96% of Americans don't even reach the recommended minimum intake of legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. And 99% don't even reach the recommended minimum for whole grains. Right? Most people don't even know what fiber is. More than half of Americans surveyed think that steak is a significant source of fiber. However, by definition, fiber is only found in one place, and that's plants. Right? Zero fiber in meat, dairy, or eggs, and little or no fiber in processed junk. And therein lies our problem, right? Okay, but wouldn't at least the protein in that steak fill you up? Well, surprisingly, even a review supported by the meat, dairy, and egg industries acknowledged that protein intake does not actually translate into eating less later on. Whereas you eat a fiber-rich whole grain for supper, and it can cut your calorie intake more than 12 hours later at lunch the next day. You feel full about 100 calories quicker the following day because by then your good gut bugs are chewing down on the same food and dialing down your appetite. Today, even meat could be considered junk food. More than a century, one of the major goals of animal agriculture was to increase the carcass fat quantity. I mean, take chicken, for example. 100 years ago, the USDA determined chicken was about 23% protein by weight and less than 2% fat. Today, chickens have been genetically manipulated through selective breeding to have 10 times more fat. Chicken little has become chicken big and may be making us bigger too. Now, meat consumption in general is associated with weight gain, but poultry appears to be the worst. Even just an ounce a day, I mean, that's like a single chicken nugget, or one chicken breast every 10 days, was associated with weight gain compared to eating no chicken at all. Yeah, it's funny when the meat industry funds obesity studies on chicken, they choose for their head-to-head comparison foods like cookies and sugar-coated chocolates. Now, this is a classic drug industry trick where you make your product look better by comparing it to something substandard, right? Well, apparently just regular chocolate wasn't enough to make chicken look better. Okay, but what happens when chicken is pitted against a real control, like chicken without the actual chicken? Chickens out. Both soy-based proteins and corn, which is a plant-based meat made from the mushroom kingdom, were found to have stronger satiating qualities than chicken. Feed people a chicken and rice lunch, and 4.5 hours later, they eat 18% more calories at a dinner buffet than those who had instead been given a lunch of chicken-free chicken and rice. These findings are consistent with childhood obesity research that found that meat consumption seemed to double the odds of school children becoming overweight compared to the consumption of plant-based meat products. Now, of course, whole food sources of plant protein like beans did even better, though, associated with cutting in half the odds of kids becoming overweight. So that's why I consider these kinds of, plant-based meats as a more of a useful stepping stone towards a healthier diet rather than the end game ideal. And part of the reason that plant-based meats may be less fattening is that they cause less of an insulin spike. Meat-free chicken like corn causes up to 41% less of an immediate insulin reaction. It turns out animal protein causes almost exactly as much insulin release as pure sugar. Just adding some egg whites to your diet can increase insulin output by as much as 60% within 4 days, and fish may be even worse. Wait a second, why would adding tuna to mashed potatoes spike up insulin levels, but adding broccoli instead cut the insulin response by about 40%? I mean, it's not the fiber, because given the exact same amount of broccoli fiber alone, provided no significant benefit. So why does the animal protein make things worse, but the plant protein make things better? Well, plant proteins tend to be lower in the branched chain amino acids, which are associated with insulin resistance, the cause of type 2 diabetes. You can show this experimentally. You give some vegans branched chain amino acids, and you can make them as insulin resistant as omnivores. Or you take some omnivores and you put them even through a 48-hour vegan diet challenge, and within 2 days, you can see the opposite, significant improvements in metabolic health. Why? Because decreased consumption of branched chain amino acids improves metabolic health. Check this out. Those randomized to restrict their protein intake were averaging literally hundreds more calories per day, so they should have become fatter, right? But no, they actually lost more body fat. Restricting their protein enabled them to eat more calories, while at the same time they lost more weight, more calories, but a loss of body fat. And this magic protein restriction, they were just having people eat the recommended amount of protein, right? So maybe they should have called this the, normal protein group, or the recommended protein group, and the group that was eating more typical American protein levels and suffering because of it, the excess protein group. Given the metabolic harms of excess branched chain amino acid exposure, leaders in the field have suggested the invention of drugs to block their absorption, to promote metabolic health and treat diabetes and obesity without restricting caloric intake. Or we can just try to not eat so many branched chain amino acids in the first place. Where are they found? Mostly in meat, including chicken and fish, dairy products, and eggs. Perhaps explaining why animal protein has been associated with higher risk of diabetes, whereas plant protein appears protective. So defining the appropriate upper limits of animal protein intake may offer a great chance for the prevention of type 2 diabetes and obesity, but it need not be all or nothing. Even an intermittent vegan diet may be beneficial. If there's one piece of advice that best sums up the recommendations in my new book, it would be to wall off your calories. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Animal cells are encased only in easily digestible membranes, which allows the enzymes in our gut to effortlessly liberate the calories within a steak, for example. But plant cells, on the other hand, have cell walls that are made out of fiber, which acts as an indigestible physical barrier, so many of the calories remain trapped. Now, processed plant foods like fruit juice, right, sugar, refined grains, even whole grains, if they've been powdered into flour, have had their cellular structure destroyed. Their cell walls cracked open, and their calories are free for the taking, right? But when we eat structurally intact plant foods, chew all you want, you're still going to end up with calories completely encapsulated by fiber, which then blunts the glycemic index, activates the ileal break, and provides sustenance to our friendly flora. So, bottom line, try to make sure as many of your calories as possible, your protein, your carbs, your fat, are encased in cell walls. In other words, from whole, intact plant foods. That's what nature intended to happen. And millions of years before we learned how to sharpen spears and mill grains and boil sugar cane, our entire physiology is presumed to have evolved in the context of eating what the rest of our great ape cousins eat, plants. Right? The Paleolithic period, when we started using tools, only goes back about 2 million years. Right? We and other great apes have been evolving since back in the Miocene era, more like 20 million years ago. Right? So for the first 90% of our hominoid existence, our bodies evolved on mostly plants. Right? So it's no wonder our bodies may thrive best on the diets we were designed to eat. So maybe we should go back to our roots. With enough portion control, anyone can lose weight. Lock someone in a closet, you can force them to lose as much body fat as you want. Chaining someone to a treadmill could have a similar effect, right? Okay, but what is the most effective weight loss regimen that doesn't involve calorie restriction or exercise or a felony? Well, I have scoured the medical literature and looked at all the randomized controlled trials, and the single most successful strategy to date is a diet of whole plant foods. The single most effective weight loss intervention like that ever published in the peer-reviewed scientific literature, a whole food plant-based diet. And that works better than anything else studied to date. Right? And no wonder, right, given what we just learned about fiber, branching amino acids, and all that stuff. Okay. I mean, look, we've known for more than 40 years that those eating predominantly plant-based weigh on average about 30 pounds less than the general population. But you don't know if it's the diet itself until you put it to the test. In 2017, a group of New Zealand researchers published the BROAD study, a 12-week randomized controlled trial done in the poorest region of the country with the highest obesity rates. Overweight individuals were randomized to receive either standard medical care or semi-weekly classes offering advice and encouragement to eat a low-fat diet centered around fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And that's all it was. Just empowerment with knowledge. Right? No meals were provided, or the intervention groups were just merely informed about the benefits of plant-based eating and encouraged to try to fit it into their own lives. Well, no significant change in the control group, as expected, but the plant-based group, even without any restrictions on portions, enabled them to freely eat all the healthy plant foods they wanted, lost an average of 19 pounds by the end of the 3-month study. Okay. I mean, 19 pounds, that's a respectable weight loss, right? Okay, yeah, but what happened next, right? At the end of those 12 weeks, class was dismissed and no more instruction was given, right? The researchers were curious, though, as to how much weight the subjects had gained back after being released from the study. So everyone was invited back at the 6-month mark to get reweighed. I mean, yeah, the plant-based group had left the 3-month study 19 pounds lighter, but after 6 months, they were only down 27 pounds. They got even better, right? See, the plant-based group had been feeling so good both physically and mentally, had been able to come off so many of their medications that they were sticking with the diet on their own, and the weight had continued to come off. What about a year later? Even in studies that last a whole year, right, where people are coached to stay on a particular diet the entire time, by the end of the year, any initial weight lost at the beginning, first few months, tends to creep on back, right? But the broad study only lasted 3 months, yet after it was all over, those who'd been randomized to the plant-based group not only lost dozens of pounds, they kept it off. Right? Not only did they achieve greater weight loss at 6 and 12 months than any other comparable trial, that was months after the study had already ended. Right? A whole food plant-based diet achieved the greatest weight loss ever recorded compared to any other such intervention published in the medical literature. You can read the record-breaking study in full for free at nature.com/article/NUTD2173, or you can just point your phone camera at the screen and pick off the QR code. Any diet that results in reduced calorie intake can result in weight loss. Shedding pounds isn't so much the issue. The problem is keeping them off. And a key difference between plant-based nutrition and more traditional approaches to weight loss is that people are encouraged to eat ad libitum, meaning eat as much as you want, right? No calorie counting, no portion control, just eating, right? The strategy is to improve the quality of food rather than restricting the quantity of food. Right? If you put people on a diet packed with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and allow them to eat as much as they want, they end up eating about 50% fewer calories than they would have otherwise. Just as full on half the calories? Wait, how can you keep people satisfied cutting more than 1,000 calories out of their daily diets? You do that by feeding them high bulk, low calorie density foods, vegetables, fruits, whole grains and beans, and fewer calorie dense foods like the meats, cheeses, sugars, and fats. Now, but it may not all just be on the calories in side of the equation. Those eating more plant-based appear to be effectively burning more calories in their sleep. The resting metabolic rate of those eating more plant-based may be 10% higher or more. A boost of metabolism that can translate into burning off hundreds of extra calories a day, more, without doing a thing. Right? Eating more plant-based, you burn more calories just being alive, just existing. So no wonder why those eating more plant-based tend to be slimmer. Start packing your diet with real food that grows out of the ground, and the pounds should come off naturally, taking you down towards your ideal weight. But what about ketogenic diets? Body fat loss actually slows down after you switch to a ketogenic diet because your body starts cannibalizing its own protein. Just looking at the bathroom scale, though, the keto diet seems like a smashing success, losing less than 1 pound a week on the regular diet, and then boom, 3.5 pounds within 7 days after switching to keto. But what was happening inside their bodies told a totally different story. On the ketogenic diet, their rate of body fat loss was slowed by more than half. So what they were losing was water, but they were also losing protein, also losing lean mass. This may help explain why CrossFit trainees placed on ketogenic diets, their leg muscles can shrink as much as 8% within 2 months. Of course, even if keto diet worked, the goal of weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier casket. People whose diets even tend to trend that way appear to live significantly shorter lives. On the other hand, even just drifting in the direction of eating more healthy plant foods is associated with living longer. Now, those going the other way, though, those who start out more plant-based but then add meat back into their diets at least once a week, not only appear to double or triple their odds of diabetes, stroke, heart attack, and weight gain but may also suffer an associated 3.6-year drop in life expectancy. That's going from no meat to just once a week meat or more. Low-carb diets have been shown to impair artery function and worsen heart disease, whereas whole food plant-based diets have been shown to actually reverse heart disease, right? That's what Ornish used. So it appears to be the most effective diet for weight loss, just so happens to be the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients. If my grandma didn't have to die like that, maybe no one's grandma has to die like that. If that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also be so effective in preventing, arresting, reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. Only one diet has been shown to do all that, a diet centered around whole plant foods. So we don't have to mortgage our health to lose weight. The single healthiest diet also appears to be the most effective diet for weight loss. After all, permanent weight loss requires permanent dietary change. Healthier habits just have to become a way of life. And if they're going to be lifelong, you want them to lead to a long life. Thankfully, the single best diet proven for weight loss just so happens to be the safest, cheapest way to eat for the longest, healthiest life. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Greg, are we going to take some questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So we'll have a mic on both sides.
Oh, do it.
Does balsamic vinegar work as well as apple cider vinegar?
It absolutely does, because it's just the acetic acid. In fact, even that nasty white distilled vinegar works. Although I would prefer people use something like apple cider or balsamic, because then you actually have a few grape phytonutrients, a few apple phytonutrients in there. But the active ingredient is actually the acetic acid, which makes vinegar. So by definition, vinegar works 2 teaspoons with every meal. But never, you can't just take it straight. You'll burn your esophagus. So, I mean, never, you got to put it in something, yeah.
Any questions? Right here.
Hi there. I'm a nutritionist and I am anti-keto, but how do you explain people that are having results where the blood sugars are going down and cholesterol numbers are going down?
So the number one source of calories in the American diet is refined carbs. In fact, in terms of food-wise, it's grain-based desserts, so pastries, cake, cookies, etc. That's the number one source of calories in the American diet. So you cut out the number one source of calories, then through caloric restriction, people can lose weight. And the ketosis, being in ketosis, I got videos about this, also blunts your appetite. So people are able to maintain that caloric restriction. Long term, they lose weight. And you lose weight by any means, and your cholesterol goes down. You lose weight by getting AIDS and tuberculosis, or a good meth habit, or chemotherapy, anything. Your cholesterol will plummet. And of course, in terms of blood sugars, they're not eating any carbohydrates. And now, of course, they're becoming more insulin resistant every day because they're packing their muscles with all this fat that's causing insulin resistance. But who would know it, because they're not eating any carbohydrates, so their blood sugars are really low. But of course, their diabetes isn't any better. In fact, it's actually worse, or their prediabetes or insulin resistance. Because as soon as they start eating any kind of, they eat a banana or something, all of a sudden their blood sugar skyrockets higher than it would have otherwise. And thank God it's unsustainable, because if it isn't, then they're going to run into these horrible long-term health problems like acceleration of heart disease.
Over here. Do you recommend a probiotic, or should the foods we be eating contribute to the gut flora?
So your gut flora are in there when you're born, thanks to your mom's birth canal, and will stay with you your whole life unless you take some oral antibiotics. Certain broad-spectrum oral antibiotics like amoxicillin can wipe out your gut flora such that it takes 2 months for it to get back. And so if you suffer from antibiotic-associated diarrhea, so you take antibiotics, and then all of a sudden you get diarrhea, chronic diarrhea that lasts more than 2 weeks, then taking a probiotic supplement, like a mixed acidophilus products, is a good idea. It's a treatment. Of course, you want to make sure it's alive, and so, just because it's in the refrigerated section of the natural food store doesn't mean it wasn't sitting on a hot truck for 2 weeks or whatever. So what you do is you take it home, you open up 2 capsules, and you dump it into like one of 2 bowls of milk, soy milk, any kind of milk, and then you come back in the morning, and they should look totally different. One should be filmy and gross and foamy and yogurty, and the other one should be fine. But if you pour them both down the sink, they both look the same. Well, you have a dead product. It's not going to help you at all. You take it back, get your money back. But in terms of day-to-day, if you're not as a treatment of antibiotic-associated diarrhea, but, well, I just want to have good gut bugs in my stomach, well, you do that by you feeding the good gut bugs you already have, right? I have a video where I do an analogy where it's like, let's say you have a shed full of bunny rabbits, and you want to make more bunny rabbits. And you're feeding your bunny rabbits pork rinds. Okay, you're feeding your bunny, and then they're all dying off. And you're like, no big deal. I'll go to the store, I'll get new bunnies. And you just repopulate. That's taking probiotics. You're starving your gut bugs, right? They're dying because you're not feeding what they're meant to eat. But fine, so you're taking more, right? Or there's another way you can make more bunnies. You feed them carrots, feed them what they're meant to eat, and they are fruitful and multiply all by themselves, right? And so you've got a few good ones in there. But they're, if you're eating standard American diet, all the cheeseburger and milkshake eating bugs, or they're the big, are shouldering out, you're crowding out your poor little fiber eaters. They're like, please eat some garnish, something, please. But then all of a sudden you start adding beans to your diet, start eating whole grain. All of a sudden the good gut bugs are, oh yeah, bring it, and then and then the fiber feeders start taking over. And the bad bugs start dying off, and slowly but surely you will populate your gut and keep it going. So there's actually probiotics, these good gut bugs, actually on raw fruits and vegetables. I don't know if anybody knows how to make sauerkraut. Well, I mean, when I was thinking, you must make sauerkraut kind of like you make yogurt, right? You take, lettuce, and you add some kind of starter, fermentation bugs or something. No. You take cabbage and you put it into salt water so other bad bugs don't grow, and all of a sudden it ferments into sauerkraut. How did that happen? Where did these lactic acid producing bugs, these lactobacillus, come from? They were on the spinach leaves, the cabbage leaves out in the field, naturally growing. So we can get the best of both worlds, probiotics and prebiotics, by eating whole healthy plant foods. And sauerkraut isn't good for you because it's got too much salt, but that was just a little, okay. Yeah.
I just got a quick question about in terms of nutrition, would you say smoothies would be better, or like a whole food? Like I know in your videos you mentioned, we can't really chew up the food that well as like you would get in a blender, and we will be readily more absorbed nutrition in a smoothie. But I know more research is coming out on thylakoids. Could you just explain the differences between like a smoothie and eating like a whole food?
Yeah, so I mean, smoothies are whole foods, right? They're just whole foods put in a blender. So what would not be a whole food is juice, fruit and vegetable juicing, right? Because then you throw away the fiber. But you retain the fiber and all the thylakoids and everything when you blend it in a smoothie. The problem with smoothies, from a weight loss standpoint, is rate of consumption. You can drink a smoothie so quickly, slurp it down so quickly, that we get such a rush of these easily digestible carbohydrates that we actually get exaggerated blood sugar spike. So, but all you have to do is drink the smoothie at the rate it would take you to eat that many fruits and vegetables, right? You make a big green smoothie, like you pack a blender full of fruits and vegetables, right? Think how long that would take you to eat. Like, oh my God, I'd be sitting there eating for, okay, well that's how long you got to sip your smoothie for. Make them thick, use a thin straw, and really, sip at a time. And then, and look, you can work, or whatever, and so you can sip it throughout the day. Then you get the benefits of both worlds. But, the negative metabolic effects of smoothies, it's all because the rate at which you're eating, in terms of calories per minute. But if you take that same smoothie and you just drip it out, over the time you naturally eat those fruits and vegetables, so your body can handle it, then there's no negative metabolic effects.
Over here. What do you recommend for someone who has lupus and is going whole food plant-based?
Who has what?
Who has lupus?
Oh, lupus.
Right. And then what are your thoughts on soy?
I've got some lupus videos coming up. So the only lupus video, so anyone familiar, lupus is a nasty autoimmune inflammatory disease. So, you've heard of, like autoimmune disease where your body attacks your own thyroid. You get hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Like, oh, that's terrible. Your body's attacked. Or type 1 diabetes, your body attacks your own pancreas. Well, in lupus, your body attacks your own DNA, right? So it attacks your whole body. Your whole body attacks your whole body. And so it can cause all sorts of horrible things. Eventually, one of the first things, your kidneys shut down. So it's just a terrible disease. Okay. But it's an inflammatory disease, so maybe an anti-inflammatory diet could do it. And so there was the single most anti-inflammatory food in the dietary anti-inflammatory index, is turmeric. So there's actually a study showing that you could improve kidney function in lupus victims with just that one spice turmeric. This doctor by the name of Brooke Goldner said, well, why use one anti-inflammatory food? Let's make a whole diet of the most anti-inflammatory foods. And she produced this practically like a green smoothie diet. It was just like packed with greens, packed with berries, packed with every anti-inflammatory thing, gave it to lupus patients. And I've got a video coming up shortly, so make sure to subscribe, talking about her initial results. She's had results for years. And every time I see her, I'm like, you got to publish it. It does not exist in science unless you publish it. And she finally published it. Yay! And so I made a video. I was so excited to make a video about it. And you will see her extraordinary results, like these women who, and unfortunately mostly women for some reason, get the disease, who were on the kidney transplant list. And then all of a sudden we're not, because they didn't need kidneys anymore. Amazing, because their own kidneys started working. All thanks to her diet. And then she adds, it's not like green smoothies forever, but just in the first few weeks to get people into remission and to reduce flares. Really amazing stuff. So keep an eye out for those videos.
One over here.
Would you address the problems associated with lectins, supposedly found in healthy vegetables?
Yes, the plant paradox. So I started getting emails about this book called The Plant Paradox, written by this guy, Gundry, right? Yeah. And I was like, what? But once you get enough emails about something, that's why it's always good to email me. You see something. And if you're the only person that ever emails me about something, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, but if you're like the 10th person to email, I'm like, I better look into this, right? Because, and so people kept emailing me the book. And so the whole theme of this book, The Plant Paradox, is that there are these lectins in food, like so-called healthy foods like beans and tomatoes and, and they're really bad for you. And so it's a paradox because plants are supposed to be good for you, but they're actually evil for you. Okay. So I did a series of videos, the first of which, I didn't really mince words. Dr. Gundry's Plant Paradox is wrong. That's the title of the video. And then I talk about lectins. I go through the whole thing. So if you're interested, you can watch the videos. But basically, it turns out that if anything, lectins are probably good for you. They're not harmful unless you can't eat raw kidney beans, but how can you eat raw kidney beans anyway? Because they're little rocks, you gotta cook them, and once you can mash them with a fork, once they're edible, then they're perfectly safe because you wipe off all the lectins. But there have been rare case reports of people not knowing how to make beans, and so they put red kidney beans in water, soaked them overnight, so they're like hard, firm, and rubbery. And then didn't cook them at all, and just like made like a bean salad out of them or something. I don't know how you could even eat that, but people got really sick. Really, so if you want to like play a really bad practical joke on someone, give them some rubbery kidney beans, uncooked kidney beans, they will not be happy campers. Violent vomiting. Anyway, but as soon as they're edible, then all the lectins are gone. And the lectins in foods that you don't cook, like tomatoes, are perfectly harmless, blah, blah, blah. And in fact, they may have anti-cancer properties, blah, blah, blah. It's all in the videos. Check it out. Yeah. All right. Oh, or wherever.
Hi, Dr. Greger. Welcome to Michigan.
Oh, thank you.
All right. My question is grains and seeds and spices.
Yum.
Grains
you make me hungry. What do you mean?
Grains you want to keep whole and not break. I get that. But you had said the black cumin, you put it in a pepper grinder to
Powder,
break
yeah.
it. You break it. Why is that?
Break it. Because the studies were done with powdered black cumin. So, and just similarly with like garlic powder. You say, why garlic powder? Why buy garlic powder? I buy garlic, right? The studies were not done with garlic. The studies why were they done with garlic powder? Because then you could disguise it into a pill. Because they wanted to do a placebo sugar pill versus the garlic pill, and no one knew the difference. In fact, they even took some garlic powder and sprinkled it on the outside of the sugar pill to make them smell garlicky, just so you really had to know which one you were getting. But you couldn't do that with real garlic. Like, how do you give people a glow of garlic and nut so they don't know? So the studies were all done with dry garlic. And so I said, well, look, this is what the science shows. Now, look, maybe raw garlic works better. Maybe cooked garlic works even better than raw. We don't know. But look, this is what the science shows, so we stick with the science. And the reason is like, well, isn't it obvious that like fresh garlic would work better? Not so with the ginger. That's really interesting. The ginger powder, fresh ginger doesn't work. That's actually been put to the test. I said, wait a second, how could fresh ginger not work? Because the active ingredient is what they call these compounds called showgels, which are dehydration products of ginger. When ginger dries, new compounds are created. And it's the new compounds that actually work. So dried ginger works, fresh ginger doesn't work. So that was mind-blowing to me. I was like, what? Right? So I was like, oh, well, I better tell people dried ginger. Dried garlic, excuse me. Because maybe dried garlic is actually different than regular garlic. So I'm going to stick to what the science, what the experiments show.
Question over here.
Hi. I'm a nurse case manager, and I have a unique role in that I present this to people who didn't come to me looking for it. I'm presenting it to them. What I found is, and I don't even know if you can address this, but what I found this year was the American College of Endocrinology came out with the recommendations to primary care doctors, and the only diet I just about fell off that they recommend is a plant-based diet. The problem is none of my doctors even knew what a plant-based diet was. And then I began to wonder how many of these endocrinologists, if you asked them, knew what a plant-based diet was, because my patients who go back to their endocrinologists come back like they're a doe in headlights. So if you even know, and I don't know that you do, but where's the American Heart Association on this? And the American Dietetics Society is still, I don't even send my patients to diabetic education because they're still not teaching plant-based. And my kidney doctors don't get it. People are getting better, and the patients buy it because they understand it, but their doctors, because I always say, go back and tell your doctor what we're doing.
Yes.
And all I hear is, keep doing what she's telling you to do. Keep doing what she's telling you to do, but nobody will
acknowledge,
connect.
right?
Yeah, they won't
yeah,
connect
no,
the
that's
dots.
unfortunate. Yeah, there's actually this new. People always ask me all the time where they can find a plant-based physician, and so I'm excited. There's this new resource. My monthly email, my subscriber email that comes out. I don't know if it either just came out or is coming out this week. talks about there's this new organization. Oh, we actually have a board member here, a fellow board member, from Physicians Association for Nutrition, this new international group, and they're putting together a free directory of all plant-based practitioners in the world. That's cool. And it's great that it exists, but if we all just go to the plant-based people, we're never going to show the other people. We're not going to show the power that nutrition can have to the docs that really need to be educated. In fact, when I go to these big American College of Lifestyle Medicine conferences, or there's a plant-based nutrition healthcare conference now, there's thousands of plant-based docs. And I sit them down and we all sit and eat together, because what else do you do at a plant-based conference than eat, right? And I say, well, how did you learn about that? I mean, because none of us got it in medical school, obviously. So where did you find about this? You know what they say? Patient. Patient taught them. One of their patients, they've known for years, saw Forks Over Knives, or What the Health, or read a book, a China study, whatever, and then they change their diet on their own. They come back to the doctor. All of a sudden, they lose off this weight. Their diabetes is better. They don't need blood pressure medications anymore, whatever. And just this astounding recovery in a patient that had just been getting worse. And that's what you do. You just manage their diabetes. They worse, and then they die. And you just try to slow down the rate at which they lose their vision, and they lose their kidney function, and they lose their lower limbs. I mean, that's all we can do as doctors, or we thought. Then all of a sudden, there's this miraculous reversal of disease, and the doctor's thinking in the back of the mind, wait a second, I got 1,000 patients just like you. What did you do? And they said, oh, there's this great documentary I saw, you got to check it out. Then they see it, and all of a sudden they change their whole practice. And all of a sudden they have a lifestyle medicine practice, because this is why they went into medicine. Because if you want to just make money, you go to the stock market, right? People go into medicine, at first at least, as young, idealistic people that want to help people, that want to take care of sick people. And all of a sudden, you can reignite that spark that led them into medicine in the first place. People actually getting better, like laying hands, jumping out of wheelchairs. It's a beautiful thing. And so whenever they're like, whenever people say, I really, I wish I had a doctor that was plant-based. I'm like, oh yeah, I know, but come on, go back to your other doctor and just show them what they can do. I mean, because all the science in the world, just for some reason, some quirk of human psychology, all the science in the world, may not stack up against a single anecdote, a single story, a single person that they knew, they know the family, and all of a sudden they see before their own eyes, even though I can show the data, but they see before their own eyes, and that really can affect them. So anyway, so we should educate our doctors. And in terms of some of these organizations, I think the documentary I mentioned, What the Health, does a good job of explaining why the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, are not the ones leading the fight in this area. And all you have to do is you look at the funding page, right? And who funds the American Heart Association? In fact, one of their gold funders or their top tier, I forget the name of them, Coca-Cola. That's who funded. And so they had Coca-Cola on the website, and they were all like, And so it's like, is the American Heart Association going to tell people not drink Coke? Of course they're not going to drink. I mean, they got hundreds of thousands of dollars. And of course, why is Coke giving to? That's exactly why. And it's just, that's really disappointing. And look, the American Heart Association does really good stuff. They tell people to cut down on salt. Okay, great. Until, of course, the salt industry gives them a little, but so far so good. So that means, leaves us to us, within our own practices, to stick with the science and educate ourselves. And it's sad because literally lives are in the balance, and it's not happening fast enough.
Hello. First, I want to say I look forward every month to your Q&As on your treadmill, so thank you for that. And today's my 2-year plant-based anniversary, and I thought, what better way than to see you?
Wonderful.
But my question is, the one thing I worry about getting is iodine, and I know you said to eat 3 sheets. I can't do it.
Okay.
So, do supplements work for that, or no?
Yeah. Okay, so great question. In fact, I have a whole series of videos coming out on iodine. So iodine is an essential mineral that we all need, and it's found in the soil. So some crops, if it's found in the soil, crops pick it up. But the problem is it's found irregularly in soil. So for example, in Northern Europe, the soil just doesn't have a lot of iodine, and so if you just ate locally in Northern Europe, you wouldn't have enough, one thing or another thing. So now we typically, you go to the grocery store, and stuff is coming from all over the world, so the hope is you're getting enough iodine. But particularly for pregnant women, because then it's really serious. You don't just need iodine for one, you need iodine for two. There can be really serious consequences of not having enough iodine for an infant. And so particularly for pregnant women and breastfeeding women, you really need to make sure you're getting enough iodine. Not just, well, I'm eating plants from around the world, and probably one of them's being grown in good soil, who knows, right? Which most people can get away with. I mean, most people don't think about iodine, but pregnant women should think about iodine. And so then you just need a source that you know is a good source. And the most concentrated source on the planet is sea vegetables. Suck it out of the seawater. And so I suggest as like a snack, you can eat these nori sheets, that we make sushi out of, but you can get a 50-pack, and you chew on them, and it's just like a snack. And you're like snacking on dark green leafy vegetables. Like, what? I'm eating greens as a snack. Okay, kids love them. Okay, some people don't love them. Okay, fine. Look, no. Look, you can white knuckle anything for a little while, but if it's going to be sustainable, you have to enjoy it, it has to be convenient, etc., fit into your lifestyle. So if you just don't like nori sheets, there's other, I encourage people to, before completely giving up on seaweed, you experiment around. So dulse flakes. It's this purple seaweed that comes in little flakes. You sprinkle it on stuff. It's a very unseaweedy seaweed, very, very mild. Probably won't even taste it. And I forget, I did a video. You'll see in the video, it's like a quarter teaspoon a day or something, really not a lot. So a little shake, you have at the table, just randomly shake, you get all the iodine you need. Arame is this nice, noodle-like sea vegetable that's good for soups. What's the other one I wrote? Oh, okay. And then, all right, well, I'm getting down. I always start with the whole foods, all right? Okay. Now, if you just, for whatever reason, right, then yes, you can take 150 micrograms, it's like 3 times a week, get all the iodine you need. You can get it in a pill, get it in a multivitamin. I would not recommend getting in a kelp tablet. Many natural iodine supplements are just little compressed pieces of kelp. Powdered kelp compressed into a pill, and kelp is a sea vegetable. But the problem is, depending on what the kelp was doing that day, it could have a lot of iodine, could have less iodine, it's not standardized. And you can actually get too much iodine. So, the company just adds iodine to it, then it's presumably. And if you're gonna buy any supplements, ideally you get what's called USP certified, which doesn't mean that it's good for you. All it means is that what's inside the bottle is actually what's on the label. Of course, it could be like arsenic on the label, arsenic in the thing. Then it's USP certified. They don't care, right? And they certify all sorts of crazy stuff. But they're just like, yeah, but the crazy stuff on the label is the crazy stuff in the pill, right? Which, unfortunately, given the poor regulation of supplements these days, is not a guarantee at all that what's actually in the thing is actually on the thing. So, so you can do that, worst comes to worst, and particularly important for pregnant women. Yes?
Question.
Hello. Hi.
Kind of light in my eyeballs. Oh, yes.
My turn.
Okay, great.
Wow. Okay. I've seen a lot of research on plant-based nutrition and rheumatoid arthritis, but I was wondering if there is much for osteoarthritis.
Ooh, yes.
The effects with osteo.
Yes, there is. So I actually have a little section on osteoarthritis in the new book. And so we used to think osteoarthritis was kind of a wear and tear disease. So basic osteoarthritis is that the cartilage cushion between your bones and your joints, particularly the knees, gets worn away, and then it worn away at a faster rate than your body can build it back up. So normally it gets worn away all the time, but we just make more. So, but if it's worn away faster, then it gets too thin and it can cause pain. Okay. And so we used to think it was just wear and tear, particularly because obesity is the number one risk factor. The heavier you are, the more likely you get osteoarthritis, very common. And in fact, as I talk about in the book, so what happens, worst comes to worst, you get knee replacement surgery, very serious surgery. And I forget the mortality rate after knee replacement surgery, but it's something ridiculous. Like 1 in 500 people don't wake up. Like, that's bad, all right? And it's done hundreds of thousands. So like thousands of people are dying from knee replacement. Anyway, but I forget how many pounds you lose. Is the equivalent of knee replacement surgery. Like, lose 15 pounds, and it's as if you just got knee replacement surgery. In terms of disability, in terms of pain, everything works just as good. And so, obviously, it just has good side effects, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but that was kind of the old way of thinking. And the reason is because you can get osteoarthritis in non-weight-bearing joints, like your fingers and your wrists. So wait a second. It doesn't matter how fat could your finger possibly be, right? And so maybe it's not just mechanical wear and tear. And in fact, you stick a needle in, you pull out all these inflammatory mediators. So it actually is an inflammatory arthritis, like rheumatoid arthritis. And so wait a second. If it's an inflammatory disease, we have an inflammatory diet. An anti-inflammatory diet is synonymous with a plant-based diet. And indeed, when you put people, randomize them to plant-based diet or not, you get significant improvements in osteoarthritis, even without weight loss. And so, yeah, it's the same diet, it's the same thing, and it works for osteoarthritis too.
I have an uncle who just, he was just treated for leukemia, and he survived.
Great.
He's a survivor, it's wonderful. Well, how effective is a plant-based diet for somebody in that situation, like a cancer survivor or a leukemia survivor, some type of terrible disease like that? Would it prevent any kind of relapse, or would it help them immensely?
So for most types of cancer, the answer is we don't know, because it's never been put to the test. So the only two cancers we have reversal data on are prostate cancer and breast cancer. There are dietary interventions that can prolong survival in breast cancer and actually reverse cancer growth in prostate cancer. But that's the extent. Now, beyond that, we have epidemiological studies, population studies that show that, for example, people with lung cancer who eat more broccoli tend to live longer than the people with the same kind of lung cancer who don't eat broccoli. That doesn't prove broccoli made them live longer. People who eat broccoli have all sorts of other healthy behaviors. And so maybe because they were also exercising or something, you try to control for that. But we don't have interventional trials. You randomize people, you eat this diet, let's see who drops dead first. That's the kind of, that we can actually prove cause and effect. And that it has not been done for the vast majority of cancers. And so all we can say is, it's not gonna hurt, it'll support your body to put up with the conventional, chemo radiation surgery, and it'll prevent all the other things. So for example, and this was actually shocking to me, and it's hard to shock me. I've become quite cynical over the years, but postmenopausal breast cancer patients diagnosed postmenopausal breast cancer, which is the most breast cancer, number one cause of death is not breast cancer. Number one cause of death of women with breast cancer, still heart disease. Still heart disease. You're more likely to die from heart disease you don't even know you have than the active cancer you have in your body. And so, whether or not a plant-based diet helps with that particular type of breast cancer you have doesn't matter, because it reverses the cause of death that you're more likely to die from heart disease. And so that's why it's always good to be on a healthy diet, to help your body best support itself through whatever crises come through. It's like asking, is getting enough sleep good for this particular disease? I mean, we don't know. No one's actually tried it. But probably a good idea, right? To just support your body, to do healthy things for your body, right? Is smoking bad for this disease? Maybe it's never been tested, but it's probably not a great idea, whether or not it hurts that particular disease or not, right? We're just talking about a healthy diet. But I totally hear you. You'd like to be able to go to your uncle and be like, here's the study that shows you're going to live 4.5 years longer. The study hasn't been done, right? But instead, you can give them this overwhelming body of evidence saying this is the healthiest diet, et cetera, support you, blah, blah, blah. And so all these other cancers it might work well against, but unfortunately, does not exist. Yet.
Dr. Greger, Bob Reiki, and before I ask the last question, I want to thank you very much for coming to Michigan on behalf of all of us in Michigan. Oh, one more after me, sorry, okay. Be coming to Michigan and your excellent presentation. Now, as a family doc, of course, I deal with this very commonly, and I start with, they want assistance. I start into calorie density, microbiome, and they cut me off. They say, no, doc, I already ate healthy. I just need to exercise more. And can you help me with that kind of 2-minute evidence-based approach to helping them understand?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. In fact, that's exactly what the food industry wants them to think. In fact, the CEO of Pepsi-Cola said we would have no obesity if everybody just exercised. And Coca-Cola went one step worse and created the Global Energy Balance Network, which is this pseudoscientific body. I mean, they hid their money, and it was later exposed. But it was this group of scientists that said it's all about inactivity. It's all about the energy out, not what you eat. Oh, and by the way, see, we were secretly funded by Coca-Cola all along. Okay. But and it's worked. That amazing propaganda machine. You ask people, what do you think? And most people say it's balance. Energy in is just as exercise is just as important as diet. And then the second most popular answer is exercise is more important than diet, right? And so the vast majority of people are simply dead wrong. And one easy way you can explain it to them, explain why you cannot outrun a bad diet, is just simple math. A moderately obese person, moderately vigorously exercising, like biking really hard for an hour, you can go through about 350 calories, right? The average calorie intake per minute for typical snacks, processed foods, 70 calories a minute. In 5 minutes, you've just wiped out an entire hour of exercise. It just shows how completely one-sided it is. And then if there's a really science-minded person, you talk about how we have total control over calories in. I mean, you could eat no calories if you wanted to. Whereas the calories out, the elective energy exercise, it's just a teeny little slice. Most of the calories we burn throughout the day, we have no power over. It's resting metabolic rate. If we lied in bed all day completely still, we'd still burn most of the calories that we burn. More than 50%, just keeping our brain going, our heart pumping. So most of our calories completely out of our hands in terms of, unless you're like, there's some articles on mountain climbers and army rangers and people that do extreme exertion. They can actually lose weight pretty effectively. But for most people, exercising, that it's just no comparison. Now, exercise, super important for all sorts of other reasons. Even if it's not really going to help your weight as much, super healthy, important for all sorts of other things. So absolutely we need to exercise, but we just cannot count on it to effectively. And it's sad because people expect it to work, and then they're like, I'm a failure. My body is biochemically, there's something wrong with me. I've exercised, started exercising, I'm still not losing weight. On the flip side, people that for some reason they get an injury and they stop exercising, they think, oh my God, I'm going to gain all this weight. And then they don't really gain much weight, even though they're like, wait a second, I'm not exercising, I'm not gaining weight. And it's the same kind of thing. It's more kind of what's going in your mouth. And before the last question,
one last question over here.
And before the last question, I just want to say, if you liked this presentation, I will be back here in Michigan in May for the Veg Fest, giving this exact same talk. And so, if you're sitting here thinking, oh, I wish my friend, family member, whatever, could see this talk, bring them in May. All right, last question.
Hi, Dr. Greger. I'm Kirsten Zalison, and I'm internal medicine.
Woo!
So I'm really happy to see you. I listen to your podcasts and your presentations on nutritionfacts.org all the time. I agree with what you said. I feel like often I'm on a desert island when I talk to my patients about plant-based nutrition because their own physician or other physicians tell you there's no evidence or there's no reason for that, or they recommend keto diets or something called clean meat, which I've never really understand what that is. That's not even my question. I just wanted to echo my frustration with my day-to-day living on a desert island sometimes.
And thank God that you have some lucky patients, I tell you.
Oh, hi. My question is about intermittent fasting. There was a recent review article in New England Journal of Medicine about intermittent fasting. Can you comment on that for weight loss?
Yeah, no, so actually the biggest chapter of my book is on intermittent fasting, just because there's so many different types. I wanted to go through every single one of them. So there's alternate day fasting, there's time restricted feeding, there's 5-2 fasting, 25-5, go through all of them. And kind of the takeaways are, so water-only fasting, so complete water-only fasting. First of all, it's not safe to do for more than 24, 48 hours without physician-supervised supervision, and even under physician supervision is a terrible way to lose weight. You actually lose less weight completely on water-only fasting than you do eating 500 calories a day, which doesn't make a lot of sense until you watch the video and understand, oh, I understand well now. And I have videos on that on the site. Alternate day fasting, the longest, largest study ever done on alternate day fasting, found significant increase in cholesterol compared to the continuous caloric restriction group. So if you are going to do alternate day fasting, first of all, they found no benefits in terms of lean body mass preservation or bone preservation or compliance or nothing. But if you like it for whatever reason, make sure you get your cholesterol tested and make sure that it doesn't go up like most patients did in this study. The one type that I would consider safe and effective would be early time-restricted feeding. So there's this body of evidence on restricting your eating window to under 12 hours a day. So most of us eat like 15 hours over the day, but so just cutting it down so that we're fasting 12 hours a day, most of which while we're sleeping. And it was really interesting when I looked at that literature. It's all over the place. Half the studies show it's terrible for you. Half the studies show it's amazing for you. And I was just like, what am I gonna, so only when you dig deep do you realize, that's what's going on. Late time-restricted feeding, meaning you skip breakfast and you have a late eating window, is bad for you, metabolically bad, thanks to chronobiology, our circadian rhythms. Food eaten at night is more fattening than the exact same food eaten earlier in the day. The fewer calories after sundown, the better. So when you do time-restricted feeding late, you only start eating at noon or something, that's bad and has negative metabolic consequences, even with the time restriction. However, early time-restricted feeding, meaning you have you front load your calories towards the day, big as breakfast as possible, make supper the smallest meal or no meal at all. If you're going to skip any breakfast, any meal, be skipping supper, not breakfast. The more calories we can front load, the better. And then you get twin benefits of not only the time-restricted feeding, but the chronobiological benefits of eating calories earlier in the day, which are better for our blood sugars, better for our cholesterol, better for weight loss. And so, early time-restricted feeding. That's one of the things in the book that actually changed my, not that I was concerned about weight, but in terms of the metabolic impacts. So now I try to eat more calories earlier in the day, unless I get out of a really long book signing. So, thank you so much for the last question.